Happy Sunday, everybody. What makes up a high performance team? That's what we're talking about today. How do we get our employees engaged? How do we get people to be satisfied with their jobs, working together to be productive and happier in their jobs with job satisfaction? My name is Dr. Elsie Coe. I am the CMO of American Endovascular and Amputation Prevention. I'm also the CEO and founder of Lead Physician, the leadership program for physicians, helping them to gain their passion, find their purpose, and really reach their potential, which we haven't been taught in school. If you want to hear more of these videos, these are free content from excellent speakers, guest speakers who come on. Go to my YouTube channel at Lead Physician and subscribe so you get alerted every time. And share this with your friends and colleagues. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you my speaker today. Her name is Dr. Janet Shlaes. She is a psychologist by background. She's the director of the Center for Innovative and Lifelong Learning at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. And she's had 20 plus years of experience in transformational results in organizational and leadership development, as well as career and life design realms. Without further ado, let me bring her on board here. Janet, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. It's my pleasure to be here and to be able to share some information about a topic that I'm really passionate
Yeah, so
about.
let's talk about that. Why is this so important about these high performance teams?
Well, high performance teams were important anyway, but they're especially important during times of unprecedented change, which we have all been living in. And especially because of what the world of work, organizations, and the medical field especially is experiencing in terms of what's being written up in many publications and called the Great Resignation. So it's critical to be able to focus on the elements of high performance teams to be able to recruit, motivate, and retain talent.
Right.
Really
So,
important.
yeah, so I know this is something that you work on with your organization. Tell us the data behind what makes up the high performance teams.
Absolutely. And you'll have an article if you want to have more information at the end. This article that was written in New York Times by Charles Duhigg, who many people will be familiar with, who wrote The Power of Habit.
Right. And this is from the New York Times.
Correct. New York Times.
Right. What Google learned from its quest to build the perfect team.
So I'm going to cut to the chase in terms of the essence of the article. And if you want more details, I highly encourage you to read the article. So the essence is Google looked at 180 teams across the organization. They wanted to know what were the elements of high performance teams, because all of their work is done in teams. They emphasize the team environment. And they originally focused, they spent millions of dollars on this research. I wish I had been one of the consultants that was hired to do it. Millions of dollars on this research, internally and externally. And their original focus, their working hypotheses, was really about the who. You know, who are the people who are on the high performance teams? And they had these working hypotheses that maybe it was intelligence, and maybe it was culture, and maybe it was gender, and maybe it was that people who went to elite undergraduate schools. And they had all of these things focusing on the who of the team members, and none of those panned out in terms of being relevant. It didn't seem to matter at all. And what happened as they continued their research and doing a deeper dive into the research is that they wound up discovering that it was less about who was on the team and more about the group norms. And so the more formal definition of group norms is traditional behavioral standards and unwritten rules that govern the how. So it wasn't about the what, it wasn't about the who. was on the team. It was about the how. How is the team? How do they interact together? And what norms mattered? That was really, really important. What norms mattered?
And what I saw the norms is like the culture of the team, right? What the group
Yes,
norms are is basically underlying culture and the paradigms of the team.
correct. Definitely. The group culture. So, what they came up with after all of this research, I'm going to cut to the chase, that the first element, there were 5 elements of group norms. And it didn't matter gender, culture. Obviously, if they were hired by Google, they were going to be intelligent to begin with, but it didn't matter where they went to school. So we're going to go through the norms. Impact. That this was an element of a high performance team. The connection to impact was all about serving to increase engagement and satisfaction and the quality of the results. And impact was a team member's perspective on the impact of their work. Was their work impactful? Meaning was important, and meaning and impact are directly related to each other. Impact was more externally. Does it have an impact on other people? Meaning is about, is this work personally meaningful to me?
Yeah, and I
Does
I
it,
see that as tying into the vision and mission of the company and the core values and making that a shared goal among the employees.
absolutely. And meaning is, I'm glad you brought up the organizational values, because it also primarily is around my core values. And
Mm,
does the work align with my core values and with the core values of the organization?
very
And
good.
Google is one of the organizations that really focuses on hiring according to values, which is really fascinating. They hire for culture,
Love
very
that.
important. Structure and clarity, very important. Structure and clarity. Are the team goals and structure clear? Does everybody understand what they're doing, how they're doing, what the expectations are individually and collectively? Really important. So think about it from your own perspective. How many of you who are listening and watching aren't really clear about what's expected of you and what the expected results look like? What does success look like? Well, this is really clear in terms of clarity. Dependability. Dependability is about that the roles and expectations are clear and transparent, and it's easy to identify what constitutes progress and what constitutes the next step. Really, really important. And if you think about this, everything that I've mentioned thus far is really about stability. Am I of value? Is my work personally meaningful? Do my values align with the work that I want to do and the work that the organization is designed to do? And do I feel valued?
Right.
That's the
And
key.
everyone knows an organization where you see high turnover, whether you're in it or you see it out externally. And a lot of times those people feel like there's no purpose to why they're there. They're just a little, they're a pea and they're like a straw in the haystack, and they have no idea how they really fit in. And so it's not a big deal for them just to leave and skip jobs based on, another perk from somewhere else. And they don't feel any allegiance to where they are.
Right. And Elsie, what's fascinating too is that other research shows that people rarely leave their organizations, they leave their supervisors.
Mm,
And even if and this is validated by research, even if they absolutely love the work that they do, if they don't feel seen, heard, and valued by their supervisor and their team as well, they're going to leave. They're going to
right.
be looking, and I could give you example after example after example of situations where that's taken place within my current organization and with other organizations that I've had the honor and pleasure to work for.
Yes, we'll
So
have to bring
here,
you on. We have to bring you back to talk about that. But let's talk about the number one, which is the most important, found from their research.
number one, drum roll, please, psychological safety. This is the one that I'm going to focus on for the rest of our time together. Psychological safety is all about, excuse me, where your work environment, specifically your team, it feels judgment free,
Mm.
where your thoughts and your opinions and your ideas are actively solicited and valued. Whether they're utilized or not, they still feel valued, and that all team members feel engaged and valued. And that's really, really important. And creating and supporting a culture, and Elsie, you mentioned culture before. So, creating and supporting a culture of psychological safety is especially important in complex settings and interprofessional teams, which in the medical field, we are all working on interprofessional teams. And also when we're living in an environment which is known as a VUCA environment, which is characterized by volatility and uncertainty and challenges and ambiguity. And the last 2+ years have been a perfect example of living in that.
I like the way
Without
they I just wanna say I like the way they put it in from their research. They called it equality in distribution of conversational turn taking, giving everyone they might not speak at all at once, and there might be different points in time during the meeting that they'll be talking, but everyone got a chance to say something, and they felt safe doing it.
Right, and that's really a good point, Elsie, that it's not about in a team meeting everybody has 5 minutes or 10 minutes to talk. That equality really takes place over time.
Right.
And because team members feel psychologically safe and not judged, even people who tend to be more introverted
Right.
will feel safe to be able to talk, to feel supported by each other, to feel that their team members have their backs, that they're not going to be thrown under the bus, and that especially their team leader has their backs too. Really,
Right.
really
And
important.
they also said the second point, a quote from this article too, is that good teams all had high average social sensitivity.
Mhm.
So people are aware of people's feelings, not based on just their words, but also how they look, their expression, the tone of their voice, their posture, whatever it is, having that emotional intelligence to be able to recognize when somebody else in their team is not in sync with someone else and calling it out and making it safe to talk about it.
Right. And we could do a whole other session on emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Because that is the difference that makes the difference
Mhm.
across any team, any organization.
I
And
just yeah, I just thought it was amazing that they took 3 years to figure this out, and they were like you said, they were going through the who, and is it because they're all the same, or they are the same level, or their education's all different, or is it more women and men, or is it like, more racial diversity? But it all came down to this. They were all different. They had teams that look almost exactly alike if you're gonna do research and you have your demographics the same, but the 2 teams can be contrasted so differently, and it was all based on psychological safety.
well, and you want differences too, Elsie. When I'm doing work at Rush with interprofessional teams in different specialty areas, I want to see diversity in terms of how people process
Yeah, and I'm
information.
not trying to downplay that at all, by the way. Absolutely. You want diversity, but for part in terms of the research, seeing how functional the team is as a unit mattered the
Right.
most. But
Mhm.
definitely, I'm not discounting. I think it's really important to have the diversity in the group.
Well, and I'm not just talking about cultural diversity or gender or any of those other things. What I'm talking about is in terms of how people perceive, take in information, and process information, because you need that diversity of experience and processing. And tagging that on to the psychological safety, you also need people to feel safe that what I have to contribute really, really matters.
So I don't want to keep interrupting you, but this is so
It's
this
an
is so interesting
exciting
to me, and
topic.
you're getting me really animated here, Janet. I wanted to know, how do you and your team, I know you're consultants for organizations and helping them with leadership development in their teams. How do you go about bringing psychological safety to teams that are not used to it? Like, how do you even start?
Okay, well, great question, because there are 5 ways. So here's your takeaway tips, so to speak. And I'd be very happy to provide additional information. You'll have my email address at Rush at the end. Feel free to contact me. I'd be very happy to talk about it further. But there's 5 main areas that you as leaders, and we're all leaders, whether we have people reporting to us or not. When I think of leadership, I think of our ability to motivate, engage, and impact the behavior of other people, the thoughts and behaviors of other people. So we are all leaders with our one-ups, with our direct reports, with our colleagues, with members of interprofessional teams that we need to work with but have no authority over and need to influence. So the first one is to demonstrate, you as an individual and as a leader, to demonstrate engagement. And that's about you being engaged in the topic, in the
Mhm.
other people. This requires advanced listening skills.
Mhm.
I once had a supervisor that when I would meet with him, I'm not naming him or the organization, would be simultaneously on his email, texting, sometimes on a conference call, and sometimes on multiple screens doing multiple things. Did I feel seen and heard? Not at all. So engagement in terms of the work, but also engagement in terms of the other people. Being really curious, and curious from the perspective that you really want to understand the other person's point of view, not curious from oh, I'm supposed to be curious and I'm going to ask a question and check it off my list. People know when you're authentic and sincere. Show understanding. And that's really about wanting to create a mutual understanding. One of the questions that I always ask is, help me to understand. So if I have a leadership idea or a strategy that I'm putting forth to my team, and somebody says, well, I think it's better to do it this way, or what about this way? My question is, help me to understand your thinking around that. And it's not unusual that on occasion, I will completely shift my thinking, because the other person's thinking is much more effective and it's something that I didn't think of, or they'll put together the dots in a way that I hadn't put together. So the showing understanding. The interpersonal inclusiveness is all about creating the space for everybody to contribute. It's about being available and approachable. And it doesn't mean saying, I have an open door policy, but your door's open, but you're not open or available. And that happens a lot. Expressing gratitude for people's contributions, a little bit of gratitude will go really, really far. in terms of developing relationships and having people feel valued, seen, heard, and valued.
And I heard, when you express gratitude, it's not just one time, it's multiply that by 5 times what you think you should do because it needs to be in multiplicity.
Well, and just get in the habit of expressing gratitude where it's what I'm going to call low hanging fruit. And that means if you talk to somebody on the telephone, a service person from anywhere, I have gotten into the habit of asking their name at the end of the conversation. Could you please repeat your name? And then I use their name and say, thank you so much for helping me. I really appreciate it.
Right. I love that. I call that impression of increase. And I like to and it helps me through my day. Also, it's not just giving back, but it's making me feel better too by saying anyone, even the grocer or, the person in the post office.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth. But giving everyone that you notice an impression increase, and not a fake one, but when you notice something, say it. How many times you notice something good about someone and you don't say it? And it doesn't take that much time and energy.
Absolutely, Elsie. And that's about setting your perceptual filters at noticing something to appreciate, which first of all makes the other person feel great, but it makes you feel great too. It feels a whole lot better to notice things to appreciate. And then the added bonus of that is that it expands the strength or the positive behavior that the other person is doing. And this is where you get to model
Mhm.
behavior
Yep,
for your team.
absolutely. So, let me just go through this again really quickly. You said demonstrate engagement, being really curious, show understanding, being inclusive, and then
Mhm.
expressing gratitude.
All right, and there's two more.
Oh, okay, let's go.
Two more tips. So the next one is about inclusive decision making, and that really is about, again, soliciting opinions and ideas from other people. And when you're utilizing an idea that somebody else has contributed that may be completely different from your original line of thinking, you want to call them out in a positive way, and to really identify positively and intentionally their contribution to the success of the entire team, which
Very
is
good.
really important when you're eliciting input about decision making from the team and you choose to go in a different direction. You want to be very clear about your reasoning about why you went in that direction. And I think of it as every level of leadership has information, some of it confidential and some of it that you can share, that other layers of your team do not have access to.
And you know what? Sometimes I've read in books or I've heard from other leaders that the leader should speak last because then that will allow people to feel like they don't have to agree with what you're saying, and you can be the last one to say what you think, and allows for inclusive decision making.
And the other thing that you want to really be aware of not doing is to, when you've already made a decision and that's the decision that you're going to go with for whatever reasons you're making that decision, you do not want to elicit other people's opinions about the decision when it's already been made.
Right. Right.
It's inauthentic. It really irritates people, and it creates an environment where people start thinking it really doesn't matter what I think because he, she, fill in the blank is not going to, it doesn't matter anyway. So why should I waste my time, energy?
Right, and setting that expectation up front that, before we make the decision, once we make a decision, I really need for the team to really, support the final decision.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then eliciting this is not a separate thing, but it's part of the inclusive decision making, eliciting from the team, how can you support that?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's an assumption that, this meta, that we're all committed to the meta goal, and everybody understands why. And inclusive decision making is also about inclusive, how are we going to make this happen?
Right. Very good.
Which is important. And then the final one, and this is really critical in terms of promoting team members and psychological safety. It's also relevant in terms of people's engagement and commitment to the team members and also to their leader, is to promote other people's successes across the organization. And really competent leaders give other people credit for success and own the failures of the
Nice.
team.
Very
And they,
good.
so
There
that,
needs to be recognition,
mm-hmm,
in order. We started doing that in our company, and we had during our holiday party, we made sure that we recognized those people who really stood for the company's values, vision, mission, and succeeded in what was needed in what they were doing. So I think people really appreciated that.
mm-hmm. Well, and there's another thing that I think is really important too, as a leader and as a colleague, is being being willing to show vulnerability.
I was just going to say that. I was just gonna. You just read my mind. I said, "There's one more thing that we need to talk about," and you just said
Well,
it.
talk about it,
No,
Elsie. I want your perspective
no,
on it.
no, because when you're vulnerable, other people can be vulnerable, right? You're setting the groundwork for how the culture is gonna. The culture comes from the top, and if you're willing to, there was an example in this paper that Google paper, and there was a middle manager. His name is Sagaguchi, I think, and he
Mm-hmm.
said that he was new. He was only there for 10 months in Google, and he wanted to know like he thought it was a strong team, but he got a survey together after he saw the results from this project Aristotle, and he found out that a lot of people were not happy, were not like feeling like they belong. So he took the group out. They went out outside of the organization, met together, and he sat them down and said, "Listen, this is something that you don't know about me. I actually have stage 4 cancer, kidney cancer, and on radiation chemo. And they recently found another tumor somewhere else, and I think that just started the whole mindset of that group changed just from him being vulnerable. And that's not what this project is saying, to be vulnerable in that way, but he decided to be vulnerable in that way. And then other people started talking about their health concerns and things that were going on in their personal lives, and then it just opened that bridge to them being vulnerable and open to speaking about what's going on at work. And then they all decided, you know what, if I see this happening, then I will speak up about it. If I find that, something's not feeling right, I will speak about it and won't hold it in. So I think that's kind of my point.
And that's so important, Elsie, because you want your team members to feel that they can bring their whole self
Mhm.
to their work, and that you as their leader and individual team members not only value each other for what they bring to the team and the organization, but what they bring to each other as human beings.
Yes, this has been so good, Janet. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Um, I want to share your email one more time. If people want to reach out to you, that's the best way to reach you, right, Janet?
Absolutely. My
Okay.
pleasure.
Yeah, and I understand you help multiple organizations, both in healthcare and outside of healthcare, with regards to leadership development. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Our leadership programs are open to anybody. We're always developing new programs, and we love to empower people.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been a little bit longer than what we usually do, but this was just so important that I couldn't shorten this any. So if anyone, so thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Dr. Elsie Coe. If you have a topic on physician leadership in healthcare, please reach out to me at info@drlcco.com. Also, if you're interested in leadership training, we do have another cohort starting at the end of the summer at leadphysician.org. Check it out and reach out to us. Any last words of wisdom for us, Janet?
Just recognize your strengths, set your filters, recognize and appreciate your strengths and your humanity, and do the same with your team members.
Yeah, that's so good. I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Until next Sunday, come and watch again. We'll see you then.